Alright, Ronan MMA, welcome back to the channel. Now in today's video, dude, I want to talk about how I believe the PFL might be the worst fight promotion that has ever existed, and those are words that came directly from Gegard Mousasi's mouth. I want to talk about every instance of a high-profile fighter that they have completely dicked around, completely stiffed, refusing to give them fights because they don't want to pay them what they were contracted to pay them when they bought Bellator. Okay, so we are going to cover the Gegard Mousasi interview with Ariel Helwani, which, by the way, Ariel Helwani is completely and totally spewing propaganda that he got directly from the PFL, and I do find it hilarious. I just want to say this before we get into the interviews. I do find it hilarious that all of these journalists, all of these fight fans that despise Dana White or despise the UFC, the way they conduct themselves when it comes to business, were completely and totally glazing the PFL, unbelievably so, because they signed Francis Ngannou, which, by the way, may very well be the reason they are unable to afford these guys, because they gave Francis Ngannou a healthy amount of cash. He has yet to make them a penny. Okay, he has not fought for them a single time. He has had 2 boxing matches since, and they gave him $20 million simply to sign a piece of paper, right? PFL got a massive amount of cash from Saudi Arabia, which enabled them to buy Bellator in the first place, right? And I believe that this is part of the reason why journalists like Ariel Helwani do not want to bash them and are just so willing to spew propaganda, because they don't want to, Ariel Helwani more specifically, doesn't want to hurt his relationship with the excellent Turkey or whatever the fuck that guy's name is, okay? So that's what we're going to cover in today's video. We're going to go over the Gegard Mousasi interview. We're going to go over a little bit of Cris Cyborg stuff. We're going to go over some Douglas Lima stuff. We're going to go over Don Davis shitting on Kayla Harrison, okay, because he's a salty bitch. All right, we're also going to go over the Dustin Poirier and his teammate situation. Every instance of the PFL fucking over a fighter, we will be going over in today's video. We are going to start with Gegard Mousasi and his interview with Ariel Helwani. I'm going to play a few clips for you. We're going to go from there, dude. So here we are with Gegard Mousasi and Ariel Helwani. Let us get started.
Okay, so let's talk about this, because, okay, so I got some information as well, and I'm going to try to figure this out. You were a Bellator fighter. Bellator acquired by PFL. Your issue now, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you're not getting a fight from PFL. They're not putting you in the Bellator series or the PFL fight series. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. I think I have the same problem as Cyborg and Douglas Lima. I spoke to Douglas Lima. He's in the same issue.
And what are they telling you or your management as far as why they're not giving you a fight?
Yeah, but the funny part is they don't even want to talk to me, they say.
So the PFL is refusing to give Gegard Mousasi any fights, even though he is signed to fight for them, right, under contract. Since then, they've released him because of the statements that he made, saying that he was going to go after them, legally speaking, and also on Ariel Helwani's show claimed that they were the worst fight promotion he has ever worked for. And now, if you've got a guy that's coming directly from the UFC or something, you might be able to write this off. But Gegard Mousasi has fought almost everywhere you could possibly imagine. The guy fought for Bellator, he fought for PFL, he fought for the UFC, he fought in Strikeforce, he fought in Dream, he fought in Pride. Okay, Gegard Mousasi, probably 10 different promotions at least throughout his professional career. And if he's telling you that the PFL is the worst that he has ever worked for, man, might be something that you want to pay attention to, considering how many promotions he has fought for. But he is saying that PFL won't even talk to him. They won't even talk to his management team. They don't want nothing to do with him, even though he is under contract to fight for them, which is absolutely brutal. I feel as though if Dana White was doing this, Ariel Helwani would not be giving them the benefit of the doubt. As he said at the beginning of the sentence, I got information, and then I'm going to try and fix this. So where, Helwani, did you get this information from? To find that out, we are going to skip ahead to about 5 minutes in this interview, and he will tell us where he got this information, and it is straight up, complete and total propaganda.
You posted on Instagram, I don't know, you or someone who runs your social media, that you'd be on the show. I got a call from someone at PFL/Bellator saying, oh, Gegard going to be on the show. Let us tell you our side of the story so that you can then...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so this is what
So a journalist in Ariel Helwani, who claims to be objective, who claims to be for the fighters, and backs the fighters no matter what, is out here parroting what the PFL's public relations fucking told him to say, essentially. Hey, this is actually what's happening. Make sure you bring this up on the show. And Ariel Helwani is just parroting it. Do you think for a second, if somebody from the UFC reached out, if there was an issue like this and said, you know what, this is our side of the story, here you go, do you think Helwani would even entertain it? Right? He wouldn't. He would 100% fully and totally believe the fighter. He would bash the UFC, unbelievably so. And there would be no playing devil's advocate or anything like that. But because it's the PFL, because Don Davis comes on Ariel Helwani's show a whole fucking bunch, because Ariel Helwani has a relationship with the excellent Turkey, okay, he won't say anything bad about them, and here he is about to spew their propaganda. So let's hear their version of events.
What I was told, and I want to know if you've heard this side.
Okay, but why can they not say to me? They have to talk to you, and you have to tell me.
No, I know.
Now, I apologize for pausing it so quickly, but Gegard Mousasi here makes a great point. Why is it that the PFL has to go through you, a journalist, to tell you what they are thinking in regards to my contract? And then why do you, a journalist, have to tell me, right? That's fucked up. We're in a business relationship with one another. I am contracted to fight for you, and I have to get information from a journalist. That makes no fucking sense whatsoever. And Ariel Helwani, I find it absolutely... I am not surprised at all that he is spewing propaganda for the PFL simply because of the amount of disdain he has for the UFC. That is the only reason why he is doing this at all, and I'm not surprised by it at all, but it is just fucking unhinged how him and his fan base can look at him and believe he is some sort of objective journalist who is for the fighters and all this shit, right? But let's continue.
No, I know. I don't like this. I don't like this.
Yeah,
no.
But anyway, what they were telling.
And you know me, I'm always on the fighter side. I always want to back the fighters.
I'm always on the fighter side, yet here I am about to parrot the PFL's propaganda.
And get you guys, I think that you're all underpaid. But this is what I was told. So I wanted to know if you've even heard this side of the story, if this is all news to you or if you've heard this. What was said to me was, at the very end of the old regime, Bellator old regime, they had told you and your team that they were going to let your contract play out and that there was no interest in re-signing you for the amount that you were making in Bellator. And at the very end, right before the company got transferred from Bellator to PFL, the old regime signed you to a contract that was the exact amount. They didn't know this, and then they come and say, okay, let's talk, and you say you have a signed contract, a new deal, and they say we never agreed to that. Is that part of the issue here?
So PFL's version of events is, we purchased Bellator. Gegard Mousasi is going to go on to tell us that PFL wanted everyone in the top 10 of all the weight classes from Bellator. Obviously, Gegard Mousasi fits that bill, okay? So they acquired everybody from the top 10 of the division in Bellator, of the divisions in Bellator. Their version of events is, we didn't want Gegard Mousasi. His contract was going to run out with Bellator. We didn't want him. Too old, too much money. Even though Francis Ngannou's, close to the same age and what have you, we're going to pay him $20 million to sign a piece of fucking paper. But either way, dude, we don't want him. And then they're saying that Scott Coker went and did a backdoor deal right before the deal was finished to purchase Bellator and signed Gegard Mousasi, or re-signed him for the exact amount that he was making in Bellator, which was roughly a couple million per fight, okay? This is, to me, immediately unbelievable, because you are purchasing a company that, if I'm not mistaken, they paid like $300 million for Bellator, something like that. That was what was being asked for Bellator. You paid a massive amount of money for a massive company, okay, that was losing money every single year that they were even operating, right? But either way, you're not aware of which guys you have on contract before you sign the deal to make that big of a purchase. You're not going to make sure. You're not going to, if that is the case, if that truly did happen, all of your legal team, your entire legal team, PFL, should be fucking fired, okay? Because that's their job, to go over this shit with a fine-tooth comb, to make sure everything is tickety fucking boo, okay? And that we've got the guys we want, and the guys we don't want are gone, right? So if that is the case, that's on you and your legal team, and you can try and blame Scott Coker for doing some backdoor deal or what have you. That's not Gegard Mousasi's problem. It's your problem, okay? Because your lawyers didn't catch it. If that is the case, but I highly doubt it. Let's hear what Gegard Mousasi has to say about it.
Does this sound familiar?
Yeah. Okay. Let's say that's my case. What about Douglas Lima, who hasn't fought for a year? If it's that the case for me, so why are not there? Because Cyborg and Douglas have the same contract, so they don't let him fight either.
So he raises a good point, right? Okay, fine. Let's give him that for me. Let's say that's the case. But what about Douglas Lima? What about Cris Cyborg? Right? What about all these other people complaining that they are being kept on ice in contracts, unable to go otherwhere, test themselves on the free market? But they're also not being given fights because they make too much money. And that's what's been said to them by the guys at PFL, right? So, okay, fine. Give them that. Maybe that is what happened. But what about all these other guys, right? He raises a good point.
What I've understood, and I have from good resources, is they said we take anyone from the top 10. They wanted everybody in the top 10. Okay, my contract is a couple million. a couple million. Yeah,
Sure.
Okay. So whatever make deal you make, it's not possible that someone slips a letter between the other letters and no one finds out. Everything has to be signed by lawyers. So whatever they did, they knew about it. They said, we take everyone from 1 to 10. So they took me, they knew the contract, and now they're like, well, they slipped it in. It's like, you're not buying McDonald's, you're buying a multi-dollar company. It's not believable that they didn't know, and someone wanted to fuck up with them, so they just did a very fast contract and no one knew about it. It's just not true. Everything has to go through lawyers. Their lawyers at PFL watched that, and they knew which contract they were taking.
Okay.
Gegard Mousasi is 100% correct here. He said exactly what I did just a few minutes ago. You have legal team. Everything gets signed by lawyers. This is a $100 million company. Do you think you're just gonna breeze over that part? Lawyers literally go through everything, fine tooth comb. This is a massive deal that got done, a massive purchase. If your lawyers didn't catch that Gegard Mousasi was gonna be on the roster for the amount of money that he made, or Douglas Lima, or Cris Cyborg, or anybody for that matter, then you need to fire all your lawyers, and that's too fucking bad for you. Do you know what I mean? That's a you problem. That is not a Gegard Mousasi problem. That is not a Bellator fucking you over problem. That is a you problem. And Gegard Mousasi, you know, as hard to understand he may be, put it pretty eloquently considering English is not his first language. I'm going to carry on for about 30 more seconds, and then we will go to something else.
So you're not buying this. Have they said this to you or your management team, this story?
Yeah.
Okay. And
yeah, my program told me, but...
you don't believe it?
It's not true. If it was only me...
So I asked about. I think every story is different. I asked about Lima, and I was told that they are just letting that contract play out too because it's a deal that they don't want to re-up. They don't want to re-up him. They don't want to re-sign him. They feel like he has reached the end. That's what I was told. The Cyborg one, probably. If I'm being honest, I was just told that Cyborg, complains a lot.
The Cyborg one, this to me stood out. The Cyborg one, if I'm being honest, I was just told she complains too much. Oh, really, dude? Yeah, the lady that has problems almost everywhere she goes, except for when she worked with Scott Coker, might be complaining too much. Wow. Odd that Ariel Helwani would be so quick to believe that when it comes to Don Davis and the PFL, his new friends, right? But when it was Dana White and Cris Cyborg having issues back and forth, Ariel Helwani 100% took Cris Cyborg's side, and I knew this intuitively without actually knowing it for real. So I went back and looked and listened to some old Cris Cyborg interviews. So please like the video and subscribe because it was fucking horrendous, okay? However, I was correct, okay? We have here when Ariel Helwani asks her about the fake subtitles that were put on the video to try and make Dana White like a piece of shit. But first I want to play this bit for you. This is after Cris Cyborg was knocked out by Amanda Nunes. She then went on to fight Felicia Spencer. There was the whole thing, Dana White saying like, no, she doesn't want the Amanda fight or what have you, which when Dana White says that, oftentimes it's because fighters are trying to like ask for way too much money, right? So he says, no, they don't want it because they're outpricing themselves and what have you. But Ariel Helwani has a theory, okay, which is completely and totally taking Cris Cyborg's side in this issue. Because his theory is out of left field. Ronda Rousey wasn't even a relative figure at the time that this was going on. But for some reason, Ariel Helwani believes that Dana White and Joe Rogan and all these guys are shitting on Cris Cyborg to destroy her image because they do not want to destroy the image of Ronda Rousey, who had been knocked out by Amanda already. Like, really fucking weird. So I'm just going to play that clip for you right now.
I know.
I have a theory, Chris, that all this stems from your quote-unquote feud with Ronda Rousey back in the day, that they were so enamored with Ronda that they viewed you as, the foil to her, to her stardom, and they just can't seem to get over that. That's my theory. No one has told me that, but that's what I feel because I can't understand how you can watch that fight on Saturday and say, oh, that Cris Cyborg doesn't want to fight Amanda Nunes. That Cris Cyborg wants nothing to do with Amanda Nunes.
So Ariel Helwani's theory on why Dana White doesn't want to do business with Cris Cyborg or has issues with Cris Cyborg is that he holds a grudge because he thinks that Cris Cyborg damages Ronda Rousey's brand, even though, as I said, Ronda Rousey wasn't fighting at this fucking time, right? But which is a out of left field theory, but when it comes to Don Davis and Cris Cyborg, it's, well, honestly, I was told Cris Cyborg complains too much, right? As if Dana White hadn't said very similar things on multiple occasions, but of course, because it was coming out of Dana White's mouth and not your new pal Don Davis or the excellent fucking turkey, you don't believe it. But when it's Don Davis, you believe it. Now, I want to show you how Ariel Helwani pushes back on Cris Cyborg when she literally made a fake fucking video with fake subtitles to make Dana White look bad. Let's see how hard he pushes her in that instance and how willing he is to just accept her answer and side with her. But when it comes to Don Davis, doesn't seem to give a shit. That he is basically shitting on Cris Cyborg.
final straw was that video that came out, and you apologized for it afterwards. Can you tell us what happened there with the subtitles? It seemed like it was edited to make him seem like he was saying something that he wasn't. What's your side of the story?
You know, the big thing, like in the video, he's really, before I talked to him, if you see after he did the interview, he said, Chris, I never said you scare Amanda Nunes. He said in my face, this is, I know my team not doing anything. He said, Chris, I never said you're afraid of Amanda Nunes. And 1 minute before, he's the interview, and they say, Cyborg, the fight not going to happen because she's afraid of Amanda Nunes. And, you know, he's lying your face. He don't feel anything. He just lie. He don't care.
So, I know that was really hard to understand. I'm gonna try and translate it for you. Now, Ariel Helwani asks her about the infamous video in which her or her team made fake subtitles, put them on the video, axed the audio, so you couldn't actually hear what was being said, but the subtitles were there, and then it, you know, poisoned the well, so to speak, okay? Cris Cyborg doesn't address it when directly asked about it, goes on to talk about how Dana White's a liar to her face and blah, blah, fucking blah, right? So literally just doesn't answer the fucking question. Now, Helwani does ask a follow-up, which I did appreciate. However, the tone of it is quite soft, right? Because he is wanting to side with Cris Cyborg because she has an issue with Dana fucking White rather than Don Davis.
Are you? And he's trying to move. He's trying to change, sweep. You know, because my team did something in the video, but he still lie. He still lie in my face. He's saying, I never said you're afraid of Amanda Nunes. This is what he did. This is what he said to me. You know, he just tried to twist.
But you did apologize for that, right? About the video stuff.
You know, my team did a mistake, and I don't have afraid to say I'm sorry. You know, you can say apologize or do something wrong. If my team did that, you know, I can say no, I'm sorry. It does not hurt me. It's good when people know we're doing a mistake. I'm sorry, but some people cannot handle it, you know.
Right. And do you feel like that was the end? Like that's what
you did apologize for that, right? And then she goes on to talk about, my team made a mistake. That wasn't a mistake. That was a deliberate action that you guys took to try to make Dana White look bad because you felt as though he was making you look bad. That was not a mistake, right? And then he just moves on. Oh, do you think that was the end? Blah, blah. Like, done deal. If Dana White had done something to that effect, Helwani would be all over it, right? So again, he is very willing to side with Cris Cyborg when it comes to her problems with Dana White and what have you. But when it comes to her problems, okay, and the PFL, well, you know, to be honest, I just heard Cyborg complains too much. I have not formally been sent any bout offers for a fight this entire year, says Cris Cyborg. Athletes deserve the ability to be offered at least 2 fights a year. Pretty sure the UFC has to offer you 3. Otherwise, they're breaching their own contract, okay? It's impossible to build momentum and grow your brand with the fans fighting any less. This was just a few days ago, right? They bought Bellator a while ago. She's not even been offered a fight. She was probably one of their biggest stars over at Bellator, which, you know, may seem ridiculous to some of us UFC fans, but that is truly the case. One of Bellator's biggest stars has not even been offered a fight yet, and it's because she makes too much money. And here we have Douglas Lima echoing that exact same sentiment. Douglas Lima, for those of you that don't know, is an absolute savage. Former champion at Bellator, has fought Gegard Mousasi, fought Rory, knocked out Michael Venom Page. This guy is an absolute stud, okay? Again, one of Bellator's biggest stars. PFL purchased Bellator, and what's going on? Last guy I beat is fighting for the belt now, okay? At the PFL, obviously. Solid win, Costello. Great job. I'm on the sidelines for a year now. What I heard was my purse was too high, and the PFL didn't want to pay and honor the last fight on my contract. Unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable. Douglas Lima, absolute stud, former champ, gets told his purse is too high. We don't really want to have you fight for us because we spent all our fucking money on Francis Ngannou, okay? Gegard Mousasi, no, we don't want you to fight. You make too much money. We don't care about you, because these Bellator guys would make PFL guys look like shit, which is really saying something, dude, because Bellator guys oftentimes, you know, are UFC rejects. You can call me casual for that take all the fuck you want, but that truly is the case oftentimes. But now you've got Gegard Mousasi, Douglas Lima, and Cris Cyborg, 3 of Bellator's biggest stars, former champions, current champ, whatever, right? All getting shafted, stuck on the sidelines because they make a little bit too much money. But whatever happened to the fighter comes first. The fighter needs to make all the money. We're going to do a revenue split with the fighters. All of this shit was said by Don Davis. All of this shit was parroted by Ariel Helwani and the like. How about, you know, you can't pay Douglas Lima or Gegard Mousasi $2 million to fight, but you're going to pay Francis Ngannou's opponent $2 million to fight? Get the fuck out of here. Do you know what I mean? And then we've got here, Dustin Poirier calls out PFL for false promise to pay for teammates' broken orbital. He brought this up on Ariel Helwani's show as well. Helwani quickly glossed over it. I'll ask them about it, what have you. Essentially, they asked one of his teammates after a fight to go ahead and get the surgery that he needed, which was obviously, as you can see here, as Jorge Masvidal would say, is fucking eye orbital. Okay, you only got an orbital in one place, but either way, dude. To go get the surgery done, we'll cover it after, right? Goes and pays for it. Relatively poor fighter, not in the position that Dustin Poirier is in, not making a crazy amount of money, goes and pays for a surgery. They won't fucking pay him. And not only will they not pay him, they told him, no, we never said that, okay? And then you've got the first one. I covered this a long time ago. Top prospect taking legal action against the PFL. A guy who, Manuel Souza, young dude, 26 years old, 9-0, unbeaten, is locked into a contract with like 3 years of a negotiation period, and he was denied the opportunity to fight on Dana White's Contender Series, okay? The PFL is fucking not just their famous guys, not just their well-established former champions that they purchased the contracts from Bellator, okay? But the young and up-and-comers, Dustin Poirier's teammate, right? Manuel Souza, okay? And then we've got Don Davis, the CEO, talking about Kayla fucking Harrison. Dude, this blew me away. Okay, and we're probably going to end on this note. But you got Josh Thompson and you've got John McCarthy, who in my opinion are absolute and total fucking Bellator, PFLator simps. They will bend over backwards. They will shit on the UFC at every opportunity they have in an attempt to build up the promotion that pays them, even though you can tell what they're saying is completely and totally false. But let's hear what Don Davis has to say about Kayla fucking Harrison, okay? Who might be the next bantamweight champion in the UFC for all we know.
Ask you the question, because it's the only fighter that I can honestly think of that has gone from one direction
it's the only one
to the UFC, and that's Kayla.
It's the only one in 6 years.
And I had heard you in an interview.
You can say that, okay? Try to paint this narrative that people don't leave the PFL to go to the UFC, right? Here's the thing, dude. Most of your talent is not wanted by the UFC. That's number one. Two, most of the talent you just picked up from Bellator were former UFC guys that are old and at the end of their career, the Corey Andersons, the Impa Kasanganais, the guys like that, right? Ryan Bader even, right? A bunch of dudes that were in Bellator were essentially guys that couldn't win belts in the UFC, okay? That's just a fucking fact, okay? And I know that people who call themselves hardcore fans like to get irritated at that fact. They'll call you a casual. That is truly the case, okay? Guys that could not become champion in the UFC go over to Bellator and become double champs, okay? That just is what it is. And then, the Anthony Pettis's of the world, guys who fought in the UFC until the end of their career, couldn't really compete anymore. They wanted to go to the minors so they could win fights and make decent money while doing it. So they're trying to paint this narrative, well, people don't leave us for them. No, because your whole talent pool is guys that the UFC doesn't want anymore. Do you know what I mean? Kayla Harrison was the only person that you could realistically see Dana White being like, you know what, I might want to have her come fight over here. Do you know what I mean? To maybe spice things up in the worst division of all fucking time, which is the women's bantamweight division. But let's carry on.
Interview where you were talking about she was still had a fight on her contract. Did you guys just decide to let her go?
It's interesting. Some people at the very, very, very top of their career are LeBron James, and some at the very, very top of their career are Kevin Durant. And they're both otherworldly basketball players. But who they are is very different as people.
True, LeBron James is a fucking race-baiting cunt, okay, who pretends to read books and doxes police officers that save young black women from being stabbed and wants them to be shot and killed. Yeah, they are very different people, right? LeBron James is an outspoken, fake activist, dirtbag, okay? And Kevin Durant seems to be a little bit more on the quiet side, but that's not the comparison he's making.
One wants to lead and change their sport, and wherever they are is the best of the world. The other is a follower who needs validation.
One wants to be a leader and change their sport. The other one is a follower. He is calling Kayla Harrison. I just turned off my light. I apologize for that. Stepped on it. He is calling Kayla Harrison a follower for leaving the PFL and going to the UFC. which to me is fucking unhinged. First of all, dude, you want to know what Kevin Durant and LeBron James have in common? Okay? They're both in the NBA. Okay? You cannot become a Kevin Durant or a LeBron James fighting, or, you know, metaphorically speaking, but playing over in the European leagues or playing in fucking whatever, or, you know, you have to be in the best promotion in the world in order to be considered the best in the world. And that's what Kayla Harrison decided she was going to do. That is the opposite of being a follower. That is her realizing, I need to go here. I'll make the most money. I'll get the most exposure. And I'll fucking win. And I'll prove that no matter where I go, I am the best in the world. Okay? And I know that she lost in the PFL, but that's not the point. Like, you can't be considered a LeBron James or a Kevin Durant if you're not in the NBA, right? Kayla Harrison fighting in the PFL is not going to be in that conversation. She just won't be, right? There will be people that praise her. Luke Thomas praises her. There are people that praise her, right? But you need to go to the fucking NBA. And in fighting, that's the UFC. Nobody gives a fuck about the PFL, dude. That's why you guys lose money. That's all you do is lose money. That's all you fucking do. And for him to just disparage her in that way, to me, is absolutely unhinged. Because just a month ago, on Ariel Helwani's show, he was pretending like, oh, you know, I want the best for her, this and that, blah, blah, no hard feelings, all this shit, right? But Don Davis seems to be a real shady, sneaky piece of fucking shit that with his innocent little grandpa look, the receding hairline, the glasses, the you know, oftentimes wearing something like along the lines of a sweater vest, he looks like a friendly grandfather. Turns out he's an absolute scumbag fuck, which if you were not completely and totally biased in hating the UFC, you probably would have realized long ago, because the PFL has had stories like this come out over the years, but now that they have picked up, you know, Bellator, and they've got a lot more high-profile fighters in their promotion, we're hearing more of it. That's why we are getting the Gegard Mousasi issue. That's why we are getting the Douglas Lima issue, right? The Dustin Poirier's teammate issue, the lawsuit of the young prospect Manuel Souza. We're getting him shit on Kayla Harrison. We're getting Cris Cyborg saying she won't be given a fight. Like, all of this shit is absolutely insane. And then after the PFL finds out that Gegard Mousasi went on to completely and totally disparage them, they released him from his contract, which Gegard was kind of, you know, in the Helwani interview was kind of hinting at that that's what he wanted. He said his team didn't want him to go because obviously, dude, you're contracted to go step in the cage and make a couple $1 million. You know, of course they want that. Gegard's like, you know, I'd rather fuck off. So he ended up getting what he wanted in the end. But it's funny that it took him going on a show, calling them the worst organization he has ever worked for, out of like 10, right, professionally speaking, and said that he would be taking legal action against them. And then they finally release him from his contract so he can go and test his water, go test the waters in the free market. But here we go, dude. We've got, imagine a world where we have guys like a Gegard Mousasi, like a Douglas Lima, like a Cris Cyborg, people like this, guys like a Dustin Poirier, guys like a you know, fucking whoever, speaking out against the UFC in this manner. They won't pay for this, they won't pay for that, they won't do this, even though they promised me this, even though this and this and this and this, and they won't let me fight because they said that they signed me for too much money. Do you know what I mean? There would be a fucking storm. Helwani would be going crazy. Luke Thomas would be going, all these guys would be going absolutely ballistic. None of them would bother to hear Dana White or the UFC side of the story. Yet when it comes to the PFL and Don Davis, you have got Ariel Helwani, this absolute scumfuck, just spewing, parroting, complete and total propaganda from a 9-figure company. Do you know what I mean? And when you were face to face with a fighter that is claiming they are getting completely and totally fucked. As I said, if Gegard Mousasi was here, this exact same scenario, only instead of Don Davis, it was Dana White. Helwani wouldn't even mention, he wouldn't even try to play devil's advocate, he wouldn't entertain it for a fucking second. He would be sucking Gegard's beer can of a dick, and that is all that would be going on. I just hit my mic, but either fucking way, dude. This is a long one. Apologize for that. Like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. I'll see you at the next video. Bye-bye.